In the morning, deep within the Zagros Mountains, the day always begins with the soft, restless sounds of life in the wilderness. Kulil Sum, with her somewhat unsteady figure, carefully tends to every little living creature in her family. She looks at the poultry she has personally raised and fed every single day, and only when she sees them healthy and well fed does her heart finally feel a little lighter. Just as she is about to wash the dishes, Bazgashte once again speaks in a tone that leaves no room for argument, issuing what sounds almost like a survival order for the day. Go into the mountains and collect some medicinal herbs. Take them to the market and sell them. Hurry up. I have to take the goats out to graze now. Faced with such cold and relentless pressure, Kulsum can only put down the work she is doing. Unable to hold it in any longer, she quietly complains about how exhausted she is. But in front of these vast and unforgiving mountains, exhaustion is perhaps the most useless excuse of all. Bazgashta's response is unusually cold, yet at the same time, it strikes directly at one of the harshest truths of nomadic life. We don't have any other choice, because apart from this work, there is nothing else we can do. Those words may carry the arrogance of a man who considers himself the head of the family, but at the same time, they also reveal the suffocating reality of life in this impoverished land. Kulsum goes back inside and takes out a cloth bag. Before leaving, she turns to him and says, "The moment I leave, you'll probably let the goats wander off again. If you want to do something, then you should either keep a close eye on the goats or go into the mountains and collect the herbs yourself." Faced with his daughter-in-law's strong challenge, Bazgashte quickly tries to defend himself. "I've always stayed with the goats. I only walked away for a few minutes." This brief confrontation cannot change Kulsum's fate. She still has to climb into the mountains, searching for medicinal herbs to earn enough money to survive. But at least by finally speaking the words she had kept buried inside, she manages to reclaim a small piece of dignity that belongs to her. Even in the suffocating struggle within this family, she still has a voice of her own. A moment later, Bazgashte raises his hand and points toward the towering mountains in the distance. He tells Kulsum to search for medicinal plants in that area, and in a rare moment of concern, he even gives her a warning. Don't go anywhere too dangerous. Kulsum follows the direction Bazgashte has pointed out. She keeps walking deeper and deeper into the mountains, until finally she enters a vast valley. For a moment, it feels as though she has stepped into a hidden paradise, a world of green completely cut off from everything beyond the mountains. Looking at the breathtaking scenery before her, her spirits begin to lift. Of course, climbing mountains in search of medicinal herbs is exhausting work. It demands enormous physical strength and pushes the body to its limits. But at the same time, it gives Kulsum something she rarely has in her everyday life: freedom. For a brief moment, she is alone with nature. In this world belonging only to the mountains and wild creatures, she seems like a solitary heroine dressed in red, venturing alone into an unexplored and mysterious land. The mountains are where she tests and strengthens herself. Survival is the sword she must learn to wield. Carrying both courage and loneliness in her heart, Kulsum gradually disappears into the endless green valley, a place that feels as though it has been pulled straight from an ancient martial arts epic. And somewhere beyond those mountains, she is moving toward an encounter, one that fate may have already written for her. The deeper she ventures into the mountains, the more nature begins to reveal itself before her eyes, its hardest face, its most barren side, and its coldest, most unforgiving form. Hundreds of millions of years of geological transformation, tens of millions of years of weathering and erosion, all of it has come together here, creating a landscape of desolate beauty, a beauty so lonely and overwhelming that words can hardly describe it. After traveling a long distance through mountains and dense wilderness, Kulsum finally identifies her first target of the day, a wild mountain medicinal plant, standing proudly among the rocks. Its broad leaves stretch outward, as though reaching up to welcome the sunlight. The long and exhausting journey of preparation has finally come to an end. The real treasure hunt through the wilderness is only now beginning. Kulsum must continue moving forward toward one steep mountain slope after another, slopes so intimidating that simply looking at them is enough to make anyone hesitate. Because this is where the real treasure hunt begins. According to the survival map of nomadic people who depend on wild medicinal plants for their livelihood, there is one brutally simple rule of value. The more extraordinary the medicinal properties of a plant, the higher its value will be when it reaches the market. And the most precious herbs are often found in the most dangerous places. The medicinal plants that can be exchanged for enough money to support a family are often the very same plants that prefer to take root in places so dangerous and inaccessible that few humans could ever reach them. After enduring countless hardships and exhausting challenges, Kulsum finally manages to climb her way up, and just as she had hoped, she discovers several rare high-altitude medicinal plants growing sparsely, clinging desperately to the cracks between the towering cliffs. The higher she climbs, the more completely nature seems to tear away its gentle disguise. Before her eyes, it reveals its most primitive face, its wildest character, and the breathtaking geological grandeur of this ancient land. The enormous cliff standing opposite her rises almost vertically into the sky. It looks like a 1,000-story tower carved by nature itself. Each layer of rock displays a slightly different color. In geology, these formations are known as sedimentary rock layers. Each layer represents tens of thousands of years of sediment accumulating beneath ancient seas. On some of these rock formations, it is even possible to find the fossils of ancient marine creatures, silent evidence of a world that existed long before humanity. Looking down from the massive cliff, a perfectly flat and razor-sharp natural cut appears almost as if it had been carved by a single enormous strike of a sword or split apart by the blow of a giant axe. Far below lies a deep and seemingly bottomless valley. A winding river cuts its way through the entire mountain range. Whenever heavy rainstorms arrive, this valley instantly transforms into a violent channel, carrying torrents of floodwater rushing down from the mountains. For tens of millions of years, this land has been continuously pushed upward, driven by the immense movements of the Earth's crust. Meanwhile, the river flowing along the bottom of the valley acts like a steel saw that never stops cutting. Powered by gravity, it constantly carves deeper and deeper into the earth. The mountains continue to rise, the water continues to erode, and through this millions of years-long struggle between rock and water, nature has slowly created a narrow but incredibly deep canyon, cut into the heart of this enormous geological landscape. On this treacherous cliffside, Kulsum discovers another medicinal plant. It has almost been completely drained of its moisture by the scorching sunlight at high altitude and the violent winds that relentlessly sweep across the mountains. She carefully brings the plant closer to her nose and takes a cautious breath. Instantly, an incredibly powerful fragrance shoots straight into her senses. It seems that nature has always had a strange habit, using the harshest forms of suffering to create the most concentrated and precious aromas. At elevations of thousands of meters in the Zagros Mountains, life must endure countless challenges: scorching ultraviolet radiation, severe water shortages, and enormous temperature differences between day and night. Yet it is precisely these extreme environmental conditions that have forced high-altitude plants to evolve some of the strongest defense and survival mechanisms imaginable. Kulsum stops for a moment. She carefully studies the surrounding terrain and examines the path ahead. Then she notices something. It seems that a brown bear frequently appears on the opposite side of the mountain, so she makes a decision. Rather than risk going directly across, she chooses to climb toward a higher area behind her. On the rocky slopes stretching out before her, countless plants with broad leaves are growing among the stones. These are high-altitude rhubarb plants. In early spring and the beginning of summer, they are considered extremely valuable. Not only can they be used for medicinal purposes, they can also serve as food. And in this harsh environment, they are remarkably precious. Yet even when faced with large patches of these plants, growing almost everywhere within easy reach, Kulsum is not tempted. She casually breaks off a young flower stalk of the rhubarb. Then she peels away the outer layer and places the tender inside into her mouth. The flesh is crisp and young, packed with natural fruit acids that create an intensely sour flavor, while also containing a considerable amount of water. Because the rhubarb's thick underground roots can store large quantities of moisture, it could potentially provide her with valuable hydration. But Kulsum has another priority. She wants to conserve her strength and save as much time as possible for searching for rarer medicinal plants, plants that can be sold for a much higher price. So she decides to keep moving forward. She shifts her attention toward wild chives and other high-altitude mountain herbs. These plants are small in size. They are also extremely lightweight. So carrying them back down the mountain adds almost no extra weight to her bag. Yet on this dry and water-starved land, these small plants contain highly concentrated flavor compounds, along with significant medicinal value. They can be exchanged for a surprisingly substantial amount of money. More importantly, they are also an essential seasoning found on the dining tables of nomadic families. What Kulsum has just gathered is a precious herb belonging to the parsley family. She raises it to her nose and takes a careful sniff. An intense and fragrant aroma immediately fills the air. In traditional Persian medicine, high-altitude herbs from this family have long been regarded as warming medicinal plants. The rich aromatic essential oils they contain are believed to stimulate the secretion of digestive juices and help ease certain spasms in the digestive tract. For nomadic communities, they are almost like a form of natural digestive medicine, an important part of everyday survival. Rare and valuable spices may be worth a great deal of money. But in the end, they are still luxuries, things that merely add flavor and refinement to life. The wild chives growing throughout the mountains are far more important. They are what truly helps sustain the family's daily life. They provide essential food, essential seasoning, and something that can be relied upon day after day. But even the generosity of the mountains eventually has its limits. Kulsum finally reaches the end of the trail. The path ahead is completely blocked. She looks down at her dress. Only a few scattered stalks of wild chives and a handful of mountain herbs are left from everything she has managed to gather. A heavy shadow slowly settles over her eyes. She begins to worry. When she returns home, will Bazgashte blame her for bringing back so little? But the truth is, there simply aren't many medicinal plants or wild vegetables available on this particular mountain. She has already searched as much as she can. Now, there is nothing left for her to do. Kulsum places the cloth bag over her shoulder and begins the long journey home. She follows the same route she took on the way up. But for someone who has already exhausted nearly every ounce of her strength, going down the mountain may be an even more painful and demanding challenge than climbing up. First, she must grit her teeth and carefully make her way down this dangerous slope covered in loose rocks. Every step must be measured, every movement must be controlled. One wrong step and the consequences could be devastating. After finally making it past the treacherous slope, she still has to descend all the way to the bottom of the valley. And then the real journey home will only just begin. She still has to follow the bed of a dried-up river, a rough and treacherous path covered with loose stones and jagged rocks, dragging her exhausted body as she makes her way through the long stretch of mountains that still lies between her and home. During this difficult descent, whenever she spots even one or two edible wild vegetables or a few valuable medicinal plants, she immediately stops, carefully picking them and placing them into her bag. Before long, a few more trophies from the mountains have been added to the folds of Kulsum's dress. She sits down, gently gathers the wild chives, and places them into her cloth bag. Then, she continues her journey home. But time is running out. Far in the distance, on another steep and towering cliff, there is someone else searching for medicinal plants, trying to make a living from the mountains. In this remote corner of the world, a place seemingly forgotten by modern civilization, people are forced to rely on methods that are both primitive and painfully difficult. Just like the cold and unforgiving mountains around them, they must fight, little by little, for the right to survive for themselves and for their families. Then suddenly, Kulsum notices something unusual ahead. She immediately searches for a place to hide. Then she climbs onto a large rock, looks toward the valley, and suddenly cries out, because she has spotted something terrifying, a brown bear. The sight frightens her so badly that she no longer dares to continue forward. For a long while, She simply stands there, gathering the courage to move. But eventually, she can wait no longer. Without thinking about anything else, she races down toward the valley as fast as her exhausted body can carry her. At that moment, there is only one thought in her mind, a thought that is primitive, but overwhelmingly powerful. She has to escape this dangerous valley. Finally, when Kulusum reaches the bottom of the valley, she unexpectedly discovers something fascinating. Up ahead, there is a fairly large wild bird. Kulusum immediately rushes toward it. She wants to catch it and take it home. But wild birds that have spent their entire lives surviving among these dangerous rocky mountains are certainly not easy prey. The bird is incredibly agile. It can run at astonishing speed, leap with remarkable power, and explode into motion in an instant. During this adrenaline-filled chase, the quick-footed bird suddenly disappears into a dense bush, and that gives Kulsum the opportunity she has been waiting for. She immediately lunges forward, using all her strength, and manages to hold the bird tightly. This time, she cannot hide her joy. A bright smile spreads across her face. Kulsum sits down on the ground and carefully examines the bird's unusual appearance. This is clearly not an ordinary wild chicken. Its feathers are covered in small white spots, almost like countless pearls scattered across its body, and the black and white skin visible around its head suggests that this is a very special species. It is an exceptionally healthy guinea fowl, but the most astonishing feature is its head. Rising from the top is a distinctive yellowish-brown crest, a strange structure that almost looks like a natural horn. Biologically, this unusual structure serves several important purposes. It works almost like a natural brush-clearing hammer, helping the bird push through dense, thorny vegetation while also protecting its eyes and head. It functions like a biological cooling system, helping the body release heat and regulate its temperature. It may even act like a natural acoustic amplifier, allowing the bird's calls to travel farther. With these powerful vocal signals, it can call out to members of its flock from a considerable distance or immediately sound an alarm when danger is detected. This bird is not only incredibly fast and agile, it is also a valuable natural resource, one that is rarely encountered in these remote mountains. Kulsum carries the guinea fowl home, a radiant smile on her face. The moment she steps into the yard, she excitedly shows her unexpected gift to her in-laws. Bazgashte looks at the guinea fowl, then says, "Last time there was a wild chicken. I wasn't careful enough, and I let it get away. But this one, I'll take it to the market and sell it." Faced with such a rare bird, a creature so difficult to encounter deep in the mountains, Kulsum has a completely different idea. She wants to keep it alive. She agrees to let Bazgashte sell the medicinal herbs she collected. But this guinea fowl absolutely cannot be sold. Then Kulsum takes everything she gathered and empties her cloth bag. Looking at the handful of wild vegetables and herbs, Bazgashte does not comfort her. He does not praise her efforts. Instead, he immediately looks disappointed. "That's all? You should have found much more than this." Faced with such criticism, coming before she has even had time to rest, Kulsum can only remain silent. She is still shaken by what happened in the mountains, so she tells everyone about the brown bear she encountered. At that moment, her mother-in-law, who has been standing nearby, can no longer hide her concern. She warns Kulsum, "From now on, you must be much more careful." Bazgashta's attitude also begins to change. He says, "Next time, you should take a hunting rifle with you, so you can protect yourself." Finally, Kulsum takes the guinea fowl back into her arms. She prepares to give it some water and feed it a little grain. The bird, with its strange natural helmet on its head, is actually something far more valuable to the nomadic family than Bazgashte initially realizes. To the people living in these mountains, it is almost like a highly sensitive biological radar system, a guard that never sleeps. Whether it is an eagle circling high above the sky, a red fox silently approaching the sheep pen, or a venomous snake hiding among the grass. The moment any unfamiliar predator approaches the camp, the guinea fowl immediately begins to make an incredibly sharp and piercing cry, a sound almost like metal scraping against metal. That alarm is enough to instantly alert both the humans and the other animals nearby. Bazgashte had only calculated one thing. If he took the guinea fowl to the market, it might bring him enough money to buy a few kilograms of flour. but he had completely underestimated the value of keeping the bird alive. After making sure the guinea fowl was safely settled, Bazgashte suddenly brings back some bad news. One of the goats has injured its leg. It can no longer walk on its own. He tells Cool Sum to come with him so they can bring the animal home. The two of them immediately head toward the mountain slope, where the injured goat is lying. After carefully examining the animal, they see that its leg is badly swollen. It appears that the goat may have been bitten by a venomous snake. The venomous snakes hiding throughout these mountains are among the most silent and most dangerous killers of livestock. The two of them immediately work together and carry the injured goat back to the pen. If the goat has indeed been bitten by a venomous snake, the wound must be treated as quickly as possible. Without timely medical attention, the animal could not only permanently lose the use of its leg, it could even lose its life. Once they return to the goat pen, Cool Sum immediately fetches a basin of clean water. She gently tries to soothe the animal's pain, but by now, the goat has completely collapsed onto the ground. If they want to pull this valuable family asset back from the edge of death, there is only one option. They must hurry down to the village at the foot of the mountain. They need to buy expensive antivenom and find a veterinarian who can treat the injured animal. And so, Bazgashte makes a difficult decision. He decides to sell the guinea fowl they have just brought home. Only by selling it will they have enough money to buy the medicine and save the goat. This time, Cool Sum does not try to stop him. Bazgashte tells the two women to stay home and take good care of the injured goat. Then he says, "I'll take the bird to the market right away." And with that, he prepares to carry the precious guinea fowl down to the market, hoping to exchange its value for the medicine and the treatment needed to save the goat.